All right, everyone, we're back. In this series of videos, we're going to cover some maximizing or mastering techniques you'll be able to apply to your stereo mixes. In other words, after you've bounced out a track like we did in the previous videos that's at -6, it's kind of a quieter wave file. We're going to be able to drag it back into Ableton and follow these steps to pump it up and make sure it's as loud and clear as it can possibly be. Generally speaking, when you're mixing a song, you're kind of mixing it quietly, making sure everything's nicely balanced relative to everything else. Whereas when it's time to master it, it's all about getting it to be as loud and clear as it can be in reference or relation to other tracks maybe in your stream. Because this might be the very last step that anyone's going to touch the song before it shows up on Spotify or Pandora or iTunes or whatever streaming service people are using. And you want to make sure that when your song comes on, it's just as loud and clear as the previous professionally mixed and mastered songs. So there's a little bit of an old theory here called like the loudness war, even dating to the early days of radio. The songs that sold the most records were the ones that were the loudest, because when they would come on, the DJ, would play the next song on the radio, and the loudest song would get everyone's attention. So that was kind of the birth of the loudness war. And nowadays, while I do believe that people have really kind of grown out of that and are looking for something that's a little more dynamic and sensual than just the loudest possible thing, certainly, especially in modern genres of EDM and stuff, loudness is still really, really important. I know I've DJed a lot of my own songs, the works in progress back in the day, where I didn't do this enough, and you have to crank the DJ mixer up and it just doesn't sound as good. So we really want to make sure that anyone even listening at home can hear all the sounds and it's nice and clear, and that's going to let us just optimize our listeners' experience. So maximizing, I liking to call this kind of mastering process, and this is really all about getting that loudness up. So if you remember by looking at the master channel, a good place to start is to crank up your meters to where they're nice and nice and high, and you want to make sure that your volumes are all zeroed out at -0, so they're just all the way up. And we'll be able to watch when we import our track and make sure that it's peaking below, still around -6, and we'll be able to see that RMS metering as well, like we were talking about in previous videos. And over here on the master, after we pump everything up, you'll be able to see that RMS get louder and louder. And eventually, as the RMS level gets within about 6 dB of the peaks, you're getting close to a nicely mastered song. Now, if it's mixed well, it's probably already pretty close to that. But different styles require different level of RMS. And generally, if you're going for electronic music that a DJ is going to play or be played at a festival or in a club, you want that RMS value to be somewhere around -4, give or take a couple dB. Anything less than that, like -3, is going to sound pretty rough unless it's EQ'd perfectly. And anything more than that, like -6 or -7, just isn't going to be loud enough to stack up to the other tunes on your playlist. So that's a little bit about the RMS standard. Another thing I like to mention really, really quick is you want to make sure that if you know you're mastering to MP3 or to streaming service, that is just a little bit of a different approach than if you're mastering to vinyl, for instance. Vinyl mastering is its own art form, and we're not covering that in this class at all. I'm assuming that after you bounce these tracks out, you're going to put them on Bandcamp or SoundCloud or upload them to DistroKid or whatever so they go up on Spotify or Beatport. That's what we're preparing stuff for. So this is mastering for the digital, era, and for ideally mastering for our tracks to eventually become MP3s, which is a little painful, but that's what it is. So to prepare our session, again, we want to make sure our volumes here are all at 0, and generally you can get rid of any track that you have except for one audio track, and also want to make sure there's no default effects on there. That's kind of the setup. We'll be going over here to the arrangement view. We'll be turning off the grid too, so we can just drop stuff on. This is just like a tape deck now. And we could even get rid of the launch quantization or the count-in if we had one. So this is now going to be kind of all set up for just mastering on a single track. And in our next video, we'll start stacking some effects onto our track and getting it to sound nice and loud. So talk soon.